Welcome to Fridays at 4, everybody. It's 4 p.m. Pacific time. My name is Jon Leland, and I try and do this every Friday at 4 p.m. Pacific time. And today we're going to talk about the future of video and television and digital media and social media and all that kind of good stuff. I'm really delighted to have Nick DeMartino here. Nick, how are you, bro?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. Nick and I go back to the beginning of time, basically, I guess.
You can see every line on the face.
I was going to say that. I mean, we've known each other since the early 70s. And so that gives away our ages a little bit. But Nick has had I noticed on your LinkedIn profile, it says that you're a media visionary and pioneer. And I think my bio says that I'm a media pioneer. And I certainly claim to be a visionary. And so we're going to talk about where all this digital media stuff is going. Nick has a resume that could take me a half an hour to do, so I won't do that. I think your biggest claim to fame is having run the American Film Institute Media Lab. You were a senior vice president there for about 10 years.
20 actually altogether.
20 years. I'm sorry, I don't read that's good. For 20 years at the American Film Institute, working with all kinds of big corporation and Hollywood people, and and now he's a consultant. If you want somebody that knows the entertainment industry and all this new media stuff, I don't know anybody better. He's working with this Idea Boost incubator that is connected to the Canadian Film Institute, Canadian Film Center. And they've got all kinds of innovative technology going on. And you're also a primary or a principal consultant, I guess, with this company that's helping people transfer big files for media production. What's that one called again?
Rushterra.
There you go. So anyway, anything else you want to say about your illustrious career?
No, that's fine.
Anyway, really good guy. Really
can't
smart guy.
tell blushing on this platform. I don't think so.
No, I think you can. I mean, I'm getting hot over here, but I'm looking for my. Let's see if I got the right links for you here. I'm going to put in a link to a slide share. I did a talk just a few weeks ago at. No, that's Idea Boost. We don't want that one. Sorry. I'm going to paste in the URL for those of you that are here live. You get this kind of stuff. That I did a talk at the prestigious Commonwealth Club of California, and about the future of video. And there's the slideshare link about the future of digital video. And I talked about 4 major trends. And so I thought we could use that as a structure to cover where I think things are going. And of course, you may have other ideas and we'll contradict each other. But
what slide is that, John?
It's slide 7 in the slide share, I think, or was it 9? Page 9, slide 9. And then there's more details as I flesh them out. But this was kind of like the table of contents. I mean, the big change, the first big change that I'd talk about is streaming delivery. We're used to cable television. We're used to DVDs. Back in the day, there was actually this broadcast over-the-air television. And, from Netflix to Amazon Media to YouTube, everything now seems to be coming over streaming. And that's a gigantic change. How is that changing the content? How is that changing the world from your perspective?
Well, on one level, streaming is simply a different transport mechanism. You've got a network that cable operators control. You've got a network that satellite delivery operators control. All of the multi-channel delivery systems have networks that deliver the bundle. And using IP, video over IP, which is remember, Netflix's original business model had nothing to do with streaming. It had to do with delivering DVDs through the mail.
Absolutely. And I think their pivot to streaming was one of the great business stories of the last 10 years.
The first meeting I had with them was because my boss at the AFI, Jean Furstenberg, was on the Citizen Stamp Advisory Committee, and she knew the Postmaster General, who, when he retired, became a senior vice president of Netflix so that they could figure out how to deliver those red envelopes faster. So that pivot was critical. And and then they tried to split it into two companies. Remember that debacle? So every move they made hasn't been perfect. They're very good at recovering, and they're very good at pivoting. And just delivering video by different means is not really the secret sauce for this product. It's the business model. It is.
But it is changing the business models, right? There's whole new ways now.
It's enabling a new business model, and that business model is what's disruptive and is what's being copied. So you have HBO Go, you have CBS, you have an NBC comedy version of it, you have what's called the skinny bundle, which is what Sling is offering now, or Dish Network.
Plus, we have the ability, a la Patreon and all kinds of other things, for independent artists to do their own thing without any bundles, right? And just to go direct to consumer.
There's all kinds of video being delivered now. I've even begun to touch on the behemoth, which is YouTube. But in terms of the question you asked, the switch to streaming video, as you point out, I think it's enabling new business models. And these seismic shifts occur when people are making money in a different way. And the biggest thing that streaming media does, it's not just video, it's animation, it's all kinds of media, is that it's instantaneously global. So they have a global footprint. So, if you look at how long it took HBO to get to, 10, 20, 30 million subscribers in the US, and then to create infrastructure and business relationships country by country by country, Netflix did it much more quickly, because the ability to deliver this product worldwide is much easier when it's being streamed over the internet. So you have that, which is a very significant thing, and they continue to blow people's, the records through the roof with the number of subscribers they have globally. And that gives them market clout, which then allows them to invest in original content. Otherwise, they're following the HBO playbook. They started out with derivative content from other sources. They began investing in original content. Now they're, Amazon as well. If I weren't going out tonight to the theater, I would be watching Man in the High Castle on Amazon.com or Amazon Instant Video. I voted for it. It's the Philip K. Dick thing. I voted for it on Amazon. So all of that is really exciting, because it opens up many, many other business models. And so some of the other streaming video platforms that we have out there that started themselves with another focus, YouTube was, their motto is broadcast yourself. It was remember UGC, the phrase? We don't hear that very much anymore.
User-generated content. Yeah, we do. So you mentioned YouTube as an e-myth before. What did you mean by that?
I didn't.
I thought you said there's an e-myth, and that's YouTube. Did I not hear you correctly?
Behemoth, I think, is what I said.
Oh, there you go.
But you can try it either way. It's probably
e-myth is a book. Yeah, no, YouTube is a behemoth. I agree, and there's all kinds of stuff going on.
But you see what's happening there. They have a layer of UGC, and then they have a layer of popular channels that have been created by talent that is a new source of video content creativity. Many of them have signed up with the multi-channel networks, the Maker Studios and the Full Screens and Machinima and on and on. Me Too is another one that I just met the CEO of it. She's amazing. That's
how do you spell Me Too? M-E.
It's M-I-T-U. It's
M-I-T-U. I haven't seen that before.
It's focused on the Hispanic market in the U.S., but It's not going to stay U.S. very long. She shared all of her plans internationally, and they're aggregating. It's not just Spanish language; it's Latino culture in English and Spanish. And it's the short form, whatever, same YouTube model, but they're building on top of that, just like another MCN, Awesomeness TV, is now producing features. So is Maker, so is Full Screens, so is Alloy.
So the big takeaway here really is that whereas used to be a limited number of slices to the pie, right? I mean, if we go all the way back to just being NBC, ABC, CBS, and PBS, as you know, I was involved in the early days of cable, and that was the birth of ESPN and CNN and MTV and so forth. And we're just seeing it multiply and multiply and multiply, right? With new delivery mechanisms, new business models. You said business model, but it's really business models, right? Because there's all different ways to finance productions. Well,
there's really only two. It's advertising and subscriptions. And I mean, you can make side money with merchandise and other whatever, but in terms of the primary method of paying for the production and distribution of content, you're either the end user is either paying for it directly, there's a subscription to it, or it's advertiser supported. And I think what we're now learning is that YouTube as a business model, that's the reason they're creating Red, is because with ad blocking technology, people are blocking the damn ads on YouTube. So the business model for the original idea, which was that people would put up with these little ads because there was content that they could get for free that they couldn't get anywhere else, is suddenly not true. I mean, YouTube is getting disrupted, and YouTube is getting disrupted by other forms of content, and they're adding the subscription layer. It'll be interesting to see whether people will subscribe to it. At some point, I think what you're going to see, so here's the first prediction, is new bundles. So I am not, as you may have noticed by my visual, a millennial. I also have no interest in your recap of a basketball game. Even slightly. I already read everything you said on your Twitter feed this morning. So. My Facebook. But I have my own interests. And so my bundle, what I'd like is, I don't have any objection to the bundle. What I have an objection to is what I get to put in my bundle. And, the problem with it right now is it's cable networks that are defined by them. And it's just mass, as one of the commenters already said, it's just become massively expensive to subscribe to cable. He said he's talking about Canada, but same thing is true here. And I've cut way back on that and enjoying the it's not over the counter, it's like over the top type services, OTT. But, yeah, I mean, I think one thread that we want to bring in is kind of another from a comment is that indie filmmakers now need to think like entrepreneurs. And you talked to, I mean, I agree with you completely that subscriptions and advertising are the big business models for entertainment, but obviously they're independent producers. I've become a big fan of Amanda Palmer's, who is the queen of social media combined with Kickstarter. And has a real following that she has really built organically over the years that now supports her directly. So that's definitely a business model that's outside the box of either subscriptions, although she has subscribers on Patreon. So, and for those of you that don't know, that's like the subscription form of a Kickstarter, where it's basically crowdfunding that people pay per month or per thing or per week, whatever it is, that the content creator sets up. But it's direct to consumer. It's not going through anybody else. Well, just to connect these 2 points, the bundle that I'm talking about, right now, the bundle in the cable world, or the pay TV world, if you will, which includes satellite and Verizon and various forms of delivering video channels, is inside the universe. They've created a closed and walled garden. So what the bundle actually does is subsidize programming that is not hits. And it's really not the cable company that's enforcing this. It's Viacom and Discovery and Fox and ABC, Disney and NBC, Universal, and all of these large-scale providers who, under the old model of cable, realized that they could have a land grab and have 15 channels that they would cram down our throats instead of the 2 or 3 that we want. So I actually was on the phone this week with a guy that I've known for many years, who's now a chief scientist for the cable labs. And he basically said that with the exception of Comcast, virtually all of the cable companies in North America lose money or are flat in terms of delivering the bundle. Between the cost of maintaining the network that they have to provide and the ever-increasing amount they have to pay per subscriber for these many channels, most of which they don't even want, much less the customers. I mean, how many Disney families and Disney, mixed families and Disney this and ABC that and whatever they have, do you really want? They're doing it because they want ABC and ESPN.
Yeah, it's becoming problematic. The thing that I would point towards, and I'm really interested in your point of view on this, is you mentioned HBO Go, but HBO Now, I think, is even more disruptive, that you can just buy HBO by itself and take that directly independent of any kind of cable subscription. Isn't the future that, I'm a golf fan, or I used to watch a lot of golf on TV before I cut my cable, but I'm presuming that my Apple TV that I just got a new one I'm about to install is at some point next year going to have a golf channel equivalent to HBO Now, where I can only pay for the golf channel, on an a la carte basis.
OTT has more channels than you can imagine. I mean, you can't even.
Right.
You can't.
Basically infinite. If you start bringing in YouTube.
Roku's got twice as many options as Apple, actually. What I was kind of getting to was the fact that what we see in general in the world among consumers is that we say we want diversity, but we actually want hits. So your Amanda Palmer example is a great one. For every Amanda Palmer on Kickstarter, there's 100 other talented ladies that don't get any traction and don't make their targets. For a variety of reasons, who knows exactly why. Amanda Palmer got a lot of support. She was adept at marshaling the support she got, and she was great at PR, and she was able to use a different set of tools to do the same thing that artists have always done, which is to aggregate fans and become successful as a hit maker. If you look at
but that's not how it's traditionally been done. How she does it is really a different model than the way it's been done in the past.
No question about it. My point is, 5 years from now, you're still going to have a bunch of channels that are hits, and some of them will be in my bundle and some of them won't. And what will change is that the ninth least successful cable channel will not be as popular as the second or third channel from PewDiePie.
It becomes, it's again, this diversification. We're agreeing about that. I'm just saying that I don't think the bundle thing holds up over time.
Here's what I mean by that. And that
isn't it like iTunes went to singles, right? You used to have to buy an album, and then it was revolutionary that iTunes allowed you to buy one track at a time. I think you can, I'm subscribing to Amanda Palmer. I'm not in any bundle. I'm just paying for her directly.
I think ultimately you're going to see the return of the bundle, but it'll be a different set of business rules. That the bundle that's currently being foisted upon us, it's not the idea that, because really, if you did the economics, if all the people who want and actually watch ESPN paid for it, it would be $35 by itself. And
without advertising support.
No, with just in terms of the economics of the current cable market, they charge all of us, and only 35% of the people who have to pay for it. I'm paying for it now, and I never watch it. So if I stopped having to pay for it, and you had to pay for it all, they'd have to make up that revenue by doubling or tripling the price of
I see. If they're removed from the bundle, then they're not being subsidized.
It's not just the loser channels that would change. So what will happen is that there will be different combinations that people will, that intermediaries, different perhaps from cable operators, somebody like Roku, somebody like Apple TV, somebody like Amazon, who will say, hey, you can get our $19.95 package, which will give you HBO. They're already doing this. If you look at the Sling
Box,
Sling offering, it's not Sling Box, it's now Sling TV. It's a $20 OTT subscription with all kinds of channels that used to only be available on cable, and then you pay another $5 for HBO and another $5 for Showtime and you can get up to 35 or 40 instead of 90 plus your basic, whatever. So it looks like that's what they're calling the skinny bundle. Anyway, I think all of this is to say that these business models are being enabled by this revolution that streaming has started, and it'll be interesting to see what the market, which means us, we're the market, what we really want. I mean, we see the same thing.
That's the thing that I said a long time ago that just seems for me more and more true all the time is you want to watch what you want, when you want to watch it, and wherever you want to watch it, right? So it's like the consumer is in control to watch on a mobile device, to watch, but the whole thing of this series is on 8:00 on a Wednesday night. Obviously, those days are gone because everybody can DVR
there's
or
still
on demand.
Oddly significant amount of people that watch that way. It's sort of stupid. I have friends occasionally who'll say, "Oh, gee, I missed that show," and it's like, "How did you miss a show? Don't you have a DVR?" Well, that's like 15 years we've had DVRs.
Yeah, but, right. I always talk about. I call it the A+B theory of media evolution. I mean, just because TV came along, the movies didn't disappear. We now have movies and TV. It's like you always get more options, but there are always some people that are still following the way it was in the past because that's their habit and that's what they want to do.
And DVDs is another example. I mean, DVDs, we say, oh, gee, DVDs are dead because there's so many preferable options to getting that content.
Right.
I never understood why anybody wanted to own the library anyway. How many times do you really need to watch most of those movies? I have friends that have whole rooms filled with DVDs. God knows why.
I know.
They also have laser
and of course, CDs and even vinyl records. I mean, it's like it still goes on.
You're right.
But anyway, so we're at like 20 after, and I think you guys could go. I mean, you and I could go forever, and I'd like to open it up. And I know this guy. I don't even know how to pronounce the name of your company. Roger's been very active in the chat. If you want to come in, Roger, I'm going to open it up because let's talk about what everybody wants to talk about. But I'll introduce the second question, and also if anybody wants to ask a question, as opposed to because some people are bashful, I'll put that instruction again in the chat for asking a question. Just do /Q and a space, and that'll show up under questions here, and we can address those specifically. And anybody that wants to come in. But my second point was what I call a production free-for-all. That we used to have this network and studio oligopoly. Is that a reasonable word there? And you're closer to the Hollywood ecosystem certainly than I am. And the way you talk, I feel like you still feel like those people have a lot of power, but aren't they being seriously disrupted? And isn't the old studio and network model in decline? Obviously, it's not going away overnight.
I think it's changing. Remember, the model has changed many times before, sometimes driven by changes in technology. And Hollywood, the principals, major studios, make almost no movies I have any interest in seeing anymore. I mean, I'm not interested in characters that wear spandex or have superpower. It doesn't interest me. I mean, there are going to be 35 comic book movies between now and 2025 that are already in the production pipeline.
A lot of teenagers will go to watch them, and that's not our demographic.
Well, I mean, the people who are going to be 11 years old by when these movies come out haven't been born yet. So how they're actually predicting that appetite is, of course, one of the challenges of running a mass culture factory. They are not looking for small wins. They're looking for massive wins, and they take massive bets. So as a result, they're making vastly fewer movies, and they have little enclaves of more interesting movies. Fox Searchlight and Focus Features, and
I throw in a plug for the best movie I've seen in at least a year. Have you heard about The Danish Girl?
But I'm going to see it Tuesday.
Yeah, I saw it. It opened the Mill Valley Film Festival, and it's one of the best movies I've seen.
Well, yeah, the Oscar bait movies that we see now that grown-ups like us.
Oh, that's such a Hollywood term. Oscar bait.
We migrate towards. I mean, last week's great movie, which was the best movie I've seen all year, is Spotlight. about the Catholic Church in Boston and the Boston Globe's exposure. Really great script, great cast, terrific direction.
Eddie Redmayne doesn't win the Oscar for The Danish Girl, I don't know what, because it's extraordinary.
But those are technically Hollywood movies, but they really are the result of a robust independent film market, which has risen and fallen, numerous times since the beginning of the
bigger picture is with all this stuff happening, they're getting a smaller and smaller slice of people's time.
Well, the real problem is a glut in the marketplace. Do you realize how many independent films are submitted to Sundance every year? Sundance being the premier venue for it's something like 1,000 times as many as that. They accept 100 to 125, depends on the year and if you include shorts or not, and they get something like 4,000 or 5,000 submissions.
Independent films to the Sundance.
So this is driven primarily by another new technology, which is digital video production. And
there's my production free for all.
The fact that I've got an idea and I can buy a camera for a really good camera. I can buy a red camera even, but certainly Canon or any of the intermediary technologies. I mean, Tangerine, which is a terrific movie, was shot on an iPhone. And has gotten raves, because it was a great script and a terrific story.
Right.
And so
storytelling does not go out of style.
But the problem is that the exhibition venue and the infrastructure for awards and reviews and recognition is mired in the old model. And so it's principally a problem it's not really a problem of distribution. If you want you can distribute it yourself, or you can sell it to any number of digital platforms. It's discovery. How do I, as a dyed-in-the-wool independent film fan, ever remotely figure out how to find the stuff that I'm interested in? I generally do it because I follow awards websites and IndieWire and a few other blogs and reviewers, and I check Metacritic and Rotten Tomatoes every week and check, I work at it and I have friends who do the same. So we do what you just did, because I just saw this movie and it was awesome. Word of mouth is the number one reason why people go to movies still, but that's not enough. And these movies don't have the economics to hold a theater for very long. And they can't fill it.
That's why I want to come back to Amanda Palmer, because, the thing that I'm listening to her audiobook now, and for those of you that don't know Amanda Palmer, she has a TED Talk called The Art of Asking, and a book out called The Art of Asking. And what's interesting about her is that she started out as a street performer, right, as a mime called the 8-Foot Bride, and made a direct connection, a direct relationship with her audience. And she's been crowd surfing and couch surfing her way around the world, literally building relationships. This fan base didn't happen just because of social media. She's amazing at social media, but she's been doing live events as a touring musician to build this audience. And that's a different model than producing a movie or producing a record and getting it out and trying to market it and find a
following. I mean, it's also
she pre-sold $1 million on Kickstarter
model,
because they were buying the record in advance.
The product is not really, it's apples and oranges, John, because a motion picture exhibition is a different situation than playing a song or following somebody on a social platform. I mean, the problem is the economics are simply several orders of magnitude greater in terms of motion picture distribution. So,
well, but when you talk about a movie being shot on an iPhone, and we're talking about different production paradigms.
Yeah, but right? What I said is that production is making the problem worse. The problem has nothing to do with talent or anything else. It has to do with discovery and how you. So the disruption is in the way people are accessing this stuff, and even on Netflix. I mean, the reason why I was such an early supporter of Netflix is because, absent any other source of content, they were the best destination for independent and foreign films. I would go through the New York Times lists and all the lists at the end of the year, critics' top 10 lists and all that stuff, and go through and put it on my save list on Netflix. And within 3 months, they would all be there, and I would see every movie that had played at every festival. That stopped happening 3 years ago when they switched to television. So now they're giving you every episode of whatever it is that they've acquired from one of their studio output deals, and they've stopped carrying a large number of independent. So really the way you now have to get it is not through your subscription, but individually on Amazon in instant video.
Well, trying to sell it in advance, but that brings up a really good point. That's a little bit off our topic, but it's in sync in some ways. I remember those early days of Netflix when you could save movies that, let's say you're not going to see The Danish Girl in the theater, but you want to see it on Netflix, and you could save it. And then ultimately a year, 2 years, whatever, when it became available on Netflix, it would show up in your queue and you could watch it. And to my knowledge, that feature has gone away.
No, I still have a queue.
I have a queue, but there are only things that are available to watch now. You can't save a movie. Like if I go in and search Danish Girl, it's not in the database because it's not yet on Netflix. So I can't put it in a save.
I don't think that's true.
Well, I want you to show that to me, because I've lost, as far as I know, when I search something and it's not there in Netflix, then I don't have the ability to save it. Maybe it's in the website, not on, Apple TV or.
Actually, that is probably true because they're different interfaces. So if I go, I'm doing it right now, and I'm going to search, and I'm doing The Danish Girl.
All right.
Oh.
So nobody else has questions. Nobody else wants to jump into the seat here and talk with two amazing experts. I guess we have a pretty small audience, actually, Nick. But, the recording is going too. But we're open to questions, and we're open to video participation from anybody that wants to come in and ask about digital video, TV, new media, new entertainment and production paradigms.
Well,
what have you. Nick
the Danish Girl doesn't seem to be available, so you're probably right.
Yeah. Right, that feature has gone away. Search Spotlight.
Well, damn the bastards.
Yeah, that's a big loss. It was really too bad, because you could, like you were just saying, that's what I used to do is, okay, I missed this in the theater. I'll put it in that queue, and it'll, whenever ultimately it shows up on Netflix, it'll be
in my case, and maybe others out there can feedback their experience. I think that this is a perfect example. Companies pivot. They did that because there was no other source. They didn't have the revenue or income or money to buy all the rights that they wanted for the stuff that was mass popular. I mean, so including original programming. As they've begun to do that and make some good bets. I mean, Orange is the New Black is a terrific series. And so forth and so on. I think House of Cards season 1 was great. I won't say anything about season 3.
Well, I mean, just successful
yes.
series.
And so they've evolved the brand. I mean, just like HBO when it started, it's home box office. It was the way you saw movies at home. And I can't remember the last time I watched a movie on Netflix. I mean, on HBO, it just, by the time the movies come out, I've either seen them or I'm not interested.
Well, and they're doing, I mean, that's the other thing I think we probably should touch on is this original production that you're talking about on Netflix, which obviously Amazon is doing. I mean, what comes
Hulu
to mind for
and
me
Vimeo and
on and on. I mean, the last thing I watched on HBO that I remember as an HBO movie was the Scientology documentary, because they actually do HBO does some good documentaries. But this exclusivity, it's like part of me wants everything. And one of the things I like about Apple TV is I can search a movie, and the new one, and it'll tell me whether it's on Netflix, Amazon, iTunes, what have you. It'll even list multiple sources, so I don't have to search is this on that. But the analogy, the thing that kind of is sticking in my craw that I want to complain about is Amazon not supporting Apple TV, because they want to sell their over-the-top box. That I can't even resell my old. They'll take back, and it's Amazon is a good place for trading in old electronics and that kind of stuff. But they will not take back the Apple TV. They will not sell the Apple TV. They'll sell everything in the world but Apple TV.
Well,
and it's like exclusive content. It's like they don't want the competition inside their store.
No, it's true. And
the bastards.
The opposite is also true in terms of these large global brands, and that is that they, a perfect example is that Shonda Rhimes introduces the exclusive trailer for Star Wars that I've seen 12 other places on the ABC Shondaland block on Thursday night on ABC television, because they're both owned by ABC and Disney. And so it's between Scandal and How to Get Away with Murder. And it's literally the showrunner is pitching the George Lucas property. This was like, what? I mean, what was the lot? She's a brand. She's a bigger brand than ABC, actually. And she is ABC, actually, on Thursday nights, that's for sure. And so, you're seeing the same kind of thing where sort of mysteriously what's recommended for Nick on Netflix, all the stuff Netflix is paid for to produce. Now, in most cases, I appreciate that, because even if I don't stick with it, I watch everything because it's my business. I have no interest in Marvel, and I watched Daredevil for a couple of episodes till I couldn't take it anymore. It was, well produced, popcorn movie, but and there was another Blab here going on about Man in the High Castle. They were up to episode 4, and they were giving recaps. It just went live this morning. The point you're making is that there is a much greater diversity. And I sit on the executive committee for the Interactive Media Peer Group of the TV Academy, and we look at these things all the time. In fact, we had a call today, and we're rewriting yet again. We've had it 13 years. We've rewritten the description of eligibility for the Interactive Emmys, I think 4 times, because, what seemed to be that for the last 3 or 4 years, we've had a category for social TV. Well, all TV is social TV now. What seemed to be an innovation 3 or 4 years ago, when people were having second screen and Twitter and Facebook were blowing up with TV, and there were tie-ins and, on-screen lower thirds and all this stuff to make social really compelling. Now it's like, meh, everybody's doing that. If you're not present on those platforms, as well as Instagram and Snapchat and, Meerkat and Periscope and 20 other places, you're not the brand that is resonating with the audience that you're trying to reach. So suddenly we're back to scripted and unscripted, which were 2 big divisions among them. I don't know what will finally be passed. It's not official. I'm speaking out.
Yeah, that interesting. That's the same. My son does a lot of podcasting, and that's one of the, that's a main distinction in podcasting is scripted and unscripted. Because some podcasts are like live interviews, and other podcasts are actually scripted and full productions. So I have one other question for you. I just remind anybody else who wants to type /Q and a space if you have a question, or if you want to come in and have a conversation with us video wise, the seat is open. You've been a big proponent and have blogged quite a bit about transmedia. And I'm wondering how big and important you think that is at this point.
I think that's a little bit like social media. It was a boomlet. I have a friend in Finland who's been a big part of the transmedia community, and he, for the last 4 or 5 years, has been doing an ebook. And his method is he has a series of questions that he sends by email, and we answer them, and then he cleans them up and aggregates it into an anthology of thought leaders in the space. And he stopped calling it transmedia this year. Last year, he asked me to kind of assess the state of the transmedia industry at the end of last year. And I said, let's all declare victory and move on. we were doing interactive and multi-platform storytelling, which was the awkward way we used to put it, in the 90s. I have 75 or 80 slides in my SlideShare deck on Transmedia that you can go back and look at, and all the precursors of experiments and trials and commercial releases that didn't sell anything, and various attempts at trying to create a story that was enhanced by the experience of a user who might step into the story world in more than one platform. And there is a hardcore group of users who like to do that a lot. But what I think we're finding is that those users are principally drawn to large-scale commercial story worlds. So if you're a Harry Potter fan, you can't get enough, and you want to be in the Harry Potter world, and you want to be able to repost it and mash it up and change it and rewrite it, and fan fiction and all these different iterations. And I did a presentation at a conference a few years back, looking at all of the authorized versus unauthorized story environments for fans for Walking Dead. And there were I found 130 different methods of entering the story, only 25% of which were official. And they do a really good job. I mean, they have fan engagement as one of their objectives, and it's a fan genre kind of a show. So, but fans were doing unbelievable things. They take the output of the machinima of the game, the Walking Dead game, and then mash it up with footage from the show and write new dialogue where characters and them role-playing themselves were talking to characters in the movie and characters in the game. And it was like whacked. I mean, they were basically creating whole new universes of content.
Yeah, people get into stuff.
The trouble with creating those from scratch, then, unless it's an adjunct to something that already has established a fan or audience appetite, it's very difficult to get traction. So we still see folks that are trying to do that. And my personal feeling is that a lot of the impulse to do that kind of multi-point of view kind of storytelling is going to be subsumed into the frenzy that we're now seeing around virtual reality. With the release of the head-mounted displays from the major companies, in the coming year, and already the scale of investment, cash dollars by companies large and small, and the VC community and the corporate Hollywood industry. I mean, last week we saw, I can't recite the exact numbers, but there's a VR company in Laguna Beach that Comcast, Disney, and Warner all invested in. And this is not going to collapse like social TV.
No, and the adjunct to that, which is kind of an extension, is the drone pilots where you actually put on a VR type screen or headset, whatever you call that, and you can fly the drones. It's actually becoming a sport that people are racing the drones, but it's not virtual reality in the true sense, because there is a reality where there's a physical drone. That would
be a form of augmented reality or AR.
Well, they call it's something personal point of view. There's another 3-letter acronym, or I like to call them TLAs, for what that's called. But there was a New York Times article about a week ago that I posted it on Facebook. It's like, it's growing like wildfire, and I want to do it. I mean, it just seems like so fun to actually be piloting a drone and flying through things, and you're watching from the point of view of the video camera on the drone.
we bringing it.
One guy said it's the adrenaline of extreme sports without getting hurt.
Well, bringing it full circle back around to where you started, one of the companies we have in Idea Boost, our accelerator for early stage digital media companies, is a company called Vertical, which is a computer vision operating system for drone cinematography. So it
I think that's a really
so
hot
it's
area.
controlling the focal length and the focus and the gimbal movements and all the variables on conventional commercial cameras that are mounted on conventional commercial drones. But this is replacing, by and large, aerial shots that used to be taken on helicopters, where they'd have a crew of 4 hanging out the side of a helicopter or mounted in a very expensive customized rig in order to be able to shoot downward. Now what we have is this app that literally has the path of the drone on your iPhone, and you can have it follow specific objects, multiple objects, the intersection of objects. You can save the paths and have them shoot it again. You can, so that you get the same shot and whatever. They're smooth, they're exciting, they can get into places that helicopters never could dream of getting into. It's a whole new world of aerial cinematography. And some of the drone cinematography that people are producing now, we're doing a pilot test in a $3 million indie feature in Toronto with that product right now. So
great. What's the name of that company?
No, that's not right. Vertical. Thank you. It started out with another name, so I keep forgetting.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, that sounds like a really interesting startup. So anyway, is there anything we haven't covered you think we should cover? We're probably going to wrap up. We're about a quarter of. I generally go an hour, but we don't have to hold you that long. We haven't had any questions from the audience at all, but people will. It does live on YouTube, so who knows what's going to happen. So my name's Jon Leland from combridges.com. I'm an online marketing mentor, and his name is Nick DeMartino, and he's at nickdemartino.net, as well as on your other social media platforms.
Indeed. Well, it's been interesting doing this. Thank you for introducing me to Blab.
Yeah, and usually it's a little more lively and interactive. But anyway, so this is Fridays at 4 p.m. Pacific, and I'm going to stop the recording. And then maybe I'm resuming the recording. We're talking about crowdfunding with Rush Miller's question about accessing media, the different tools for accessing media, TV and film. And he's crowdfunding a cartoon. I'm sorry I interrupt, Nick, but we're back on the recording again.
Well, I was just going to say that I think we're now, kind of in a mature state. I actually was supposed to go to a panel session yesterday on new developments in crowdfunding, but I had a conflict and couldn't attend in Santa Monica. But, not only do we have the mainstays of Kickstarter and Indiegogo being slightly different model and whatever, but you also now have
Patreon, which is, the one that I'm
that's a subscription.
Right, but you get to support an artist on an ongoing basis rather than just one film or just one album.
Right. Well, and now what we also have is, thanks to the recent changes in federal legislation, we have equity crowdfunding. So we have, this may or may not be appropriate for the scale that Rush is working at, but for startups that I'm working on now, the ability to solicit investment with equity as a result, and not T-shirts and whatever that you can offer, copies of the movie and stuff like that, it is a game changer. It'll be interesting to watch as that explodes, because what we're seeing really in finance in general is that the wisdom of the crowds really makes sense, in the sense that you used to have a very limited and therefore a gateway kind of situation as to whose taste was going to govern investment. Now you can find people all over the world that share your interest and taste. Again, the challenge is discovery. So I've got this really cool idea, and I'm convinced it's the greatest thing since sliced bread. How do I find the people who might agree with me? How do I find the people who might agree with me, who are willing to part with their dollars? And
I speak to that because that's my social media, and my last theme in this. What did I do? Oh, in my slideshare that I put up there is around the authentic connections. And what Amanda Palmer, what I've learned from listening to her book, is the way that she built these relationships. So, it's like the mentality of a media form being strictly an event is, I think, what is becoming. It's not going to go away. And again, it's A plus B. But people that develop an audience and build relationships over time, that discovery factor is not the same. It's like, are you familiar with Kevin Kelly's article, 1,000 True Fans? It's like, it's like that is a seminal article that was, prescient on his part, because when you have a following and when you develop that relationship over time, when I talk about marketing, I talk about long-term sustainable relationships, right? It's not, slam bam, thank you, ma'am. It's not like, here's my latest thing, buy that now. It's like, I've been around and I've been being me and I've been contributing value. And, in Amanda's case, she's been doing free, she calls them ninja gigs, and she's been creating relationships with people, so that when she does do something, her tribe is there. It's like she's built a community, and that gets built, brick by brick, if you will, over an extended period of time. Then you have a relationship and you're not searching for, now people have to find me because I finally published my book or put out my movie.
Well, again, there's no question that is a game changer for many people. All I'm trying to suggest is it's a game changer in terms of a sustainable career for a tiny number of people. And it is a profit maker for the platforms that offer this kind of thing, but it's very difficult to create a sustainable business model simply through donations without other revenue streams. And leaving aside Kickstarter fatigue, which for many of us is a real thing, I'm just saying that, this is there we have someone. This is a difficult thing to succeed at. And I wouldn't underestimate, it becomes a marketing campaign at the end of the day if you're using these crowdfunding platforms. And there are, just as many tricks to making it succeed as any other marketing technique. And
yeah, it's just different. It's different kind of relationship building.
I think the real thing is that even if they want it, whether you're an author or a singer or a filmmaker, used to be somebody else took care of this shit for you. Now you have to do it all yourself. And not everybody is temperamentally inclined to be an artist and a marketer at the same time.
Yeah, no, it definitely, and that's, people make a lot of points about Amanda Palmer, but she's got a unique skill set in terms of her social aspect and her use of social media and the kind of, dynamo that she is. Rush, I'll get to you one second. The last.
No problem. I'm interested in what you have to say, and it's very interesting.
Well, go ahead. It's my mind went blank there. So did you want to ask a question?
Sorry about that, John. And Nick, I think there's a couple of things that you mentioned, and actually I probably didn't phrase my question right, so I do want to come back to my original question over in the sideline. But you mentioned the changes with the SEC and Title III with crowdfunding. Very interesting implications, because the Title III changes makes it so that it's not an accredited investor anymore. Right. So it used to be, what we're talking about in crowdfunding is usually in crowdfunding, whatever form you use, from a GoFundMe, Indiegogo, Kickstarter, you get no equity into whatever you're donating to. You're donating hoping that this project's going to come to fruition. But in the equity crowdfunding, you're now getting a position in whatever that is, that entity or project is, so that if it gains a profit, you should be getting some of it. Now, in the traditional sense, the SEC has always said, that Security and Exchange Commission has always said, that if you're going to be an investor in a new entity, you have to be an accredited investor, which means you have to be making over $250,000 for, I forget, 3 to 5 years. You have to have $1 million worth of net assets. And so this is for people that can absorb the loss. The problem I see with crowdfunding, and I've been now studying this pretty heavily for over a year, because with a lot of research into indie film, animation, and things like that. A lot of these things never come to fruition. There's a lot of fraud and abuse from GoFundMe. There was just a big story out of Chicago or something, where the lady raised all this money and just went out and bought a car. I know people that all of a sudden raised all this money for a dead dog, that ends up going into, or a sick dog goes out and takes flying lessons. And so some of the animation things, they've raised almost $500,000. This was 2 years ago, never came to fruition. So I think there's going to be a lot of sorting out with this Title III change with the SEC and equity crowdfunding. And I don't think we've heard the last of it, because there's going to be some people that get taken, and it's whether they can absorb that or not, whether it could really become a hotbed issue if people are not finishing up their projects. So that's just my editorial.
And I think you're absolutely right. And it's one of the reasons why the last provision of the Jobs Act was delayed for so long, because the SEC was concerned. I mean, it's the little old lady from Pasadena who thinks this project about kitties is really adorable and she's got some money. I mean, my aunt, God love her, in the last 2 years of her life, gave most of her money away to various direct mail solicitations having to do with animal welfare because she was on somebody's list. And until finally my cousin realized it and, picked up the mail before she got to see it. Well, I think we have an electronic version of the same thing going on.
Well, and I think they're trying, I think they've put some cash limits, and I can't remember. I'll have to reread it and go through some of the different things on whether they put cash limits on non-accredited investors that can't absorb the loss. Because people get that get rich quick thing. They think, because maybe it's even somebody that's been successful. It's not a guarantee that they're going to be successful again. And then to backtrack on a whole nother subject on this, and John, you are exactly right. The 1,000, what is it? 1,000
true fans. Yeah, that's actually what I want to come back to.
I read it actually again today. Fantastic article.
Wow.
But this is all about developing a community. And it is an advertising marketing. We've got a marketing company that's developed a program for us. Again, we've been ramping this up for a year. We're trying to build our community because a lot of people think they can just go throw something on Indiegogo, Kickstarter, and it's going to be, somebody else is going to fund it. And that's just not the case either. There's a lot of planning that has to go into
it definitely. People have this misconception that you push a button or it's an instant solution. But the thing about 1,000 True Fans, that when we look at these new business models, Nick, that there's this whole kind of possibility of, like, let's take an independent musician that's jamming at night and trying to develop a music career. They don't even, at the early stages, if they have 100 people following them that are on Patreon giving them, $5 a month, it's still going to be $500 that they didn't have before. And that you can scale that thing up in the model that Kevin Kelly talks about in that article, that there's new ways to earn a living that don't necessarily go to Hollywood level productions for sure. Potentially in Amanda Palmer's level, they can go it can be big numbers. But
I think
you were talking about, those are going to be the exceptions, but there's just lots of micro businesses that are possible.
Yeah. Well, the successes, frankly, are coming with YouTube. So really and again, each one of these platforms and these, use cases and success stories all have their own quirks, and, get away from the super mega PewDiePie peculiarities. That's just a kind of an unusual circumstance. He combines video games with a nice haircut and funny whatever and dirty potty mouth, whatever it is that appeals to people. He's got it. And he's up to, 41 million subscribers or something. But I know many, many, many people who have successfully used the YouTube platform, and it is just as, it's incredibly hard work. You have a primary brand, and you have to feed the brand as you continue to get subscribers. And then you have to have a second video blog, when you have fans who want more of you. You can do something that doesn't require the same level of production value. People make fun of it compared to features or even TV. But, if you look at the successful YouTube channel folks who have more than 1 million subscribers, they work pretty hard at the production value within the framework of a short YouTube type video. And
not to mention marketing and spreading the word.
oh, it's incredible. I mean, I one of the guys that worked for me at AFI who was a young fellow who was a comedian that came to work for me as his day job. I was fortunate because he was spending his weekends doing his YouTube stuff and learning how the platform worked and meeting all the people who made decisions at YouTube. So I promoted him to be our social media and video maven, and he took us from 200th to number 2 most viewed nonprofit in 3 months. And within 3 more months, we were making enough money off of our advertising to pay a salary. So that was just a little tiny corner of the world. My friend Amber J. Lawson is now just launched a what's it called? Good Accelerated or Good Amplified? Good Amplified. It's the first multi-channel network for nonprofits. So she's basically specializing in helping nonprofits who are using video and are on YouTube to optimize their viewing. This is what MCNs do. They improve the metadata. They figure out how the tagging works.
Multi-channel networks I'm going to put in for the newbies, MCNs.
Yeah, and exactly. And so my favorite example from our accelerator experience, we brought a company in. This was 2 guys who were science graduates at the University of Waterloo. They were 22 years old. When they came in, they had 100,000 subscribers. The channel was called ASAP Science, and their idea was to popularize scientific concepts in a popular way. And they did basically that kind of animated drawing of, and it's cheap
like
to print.
whiteboard animation.
Whiteboard animation, stop action whiteboard animation, but with very engaging and funny subjects. And their number 1 video of all time is Why Do We Get Morning Wood? And
hold on, I got to go Google that. What was that?
How to get morning wood? Yeah.
AmplifyGood.com for people that are. That's great. That's a great tip, and that sounds like it fits for you, Rush, because you're doing a nonprofit.
Yeah, I put the Amplified Good there in the side, and I've got it pulled up in my browser, and I also put the URL to the or link to that 1,000 True Fans up as well.
Oh, good. I didn't see that. Great. Yeah, I appreciate you
doing that. They're both in the sidebar there.
Yeah, thank you. Community effort.
Yeah. So the point about ASAP Science is that they came into our accelerator to try to reimagine their brand as more than just a YouTube channel. And by the time, 4 months, accelerator, by the time they left, they were close to 1 million subscrires. They were doing a video a week. They had been featured.
So key, that consistency.
They have been featured on some really huge Twitter, discovered by and promoted by some big name Twitter accounts and so forth. And we got them a TV deal and a book deal. So they're a brand, ASAP.
What is the TV? What kind of TV deal?
With the PBS and CBC. They now have more subscribers than Khan Academy, which was until then the number 1 science and teaching and learning site on the internet.
And Khan Academy is huge.
Yeah, and they had we gave them their first investment. So the idea that but what I'm trying to get across here is that they work their tails off. They were working 18 hours a day. People didn't go back to them if they had a video that was crappy. Every one of them was a killer, and they did a killer video every week. Mm-hmm. Every week. That's a lot of content, as opposed
every week.
That's a lot of video.
Yeah,
and
it's a lot of work.
And a lot of, it took a lot of talent and imagination. And they had a board of scientists, and we examined all these questions about their credibility. Should they take investment from drug companies, for example? And, because they were getting popular and they were getting offers that they weren't sure they wanted. How do they interact with government agencies that were science-oriented in Canada? So every one of these properties, it's not really that different when you get down to it. And there's a constellation of relationships that exist in the online YouTube world that really help. Multi-channel networks are one way to go. I don't know if it's still available and whether it's true in your city or other cities, but in the early days of YouTube especially, one way to boost your viewership was to be in each other's videos. So you'd get somebody that was popular to be in your video and their fans would come over and watch it and follow you and that kind of thing.
It's like the joint ventures that happen in internet marketing all the time.
Yeah.
And and collaborations even here on Blab is kind of fun to, I've been meeting people and then having.
He locked up.
He did. John,
Yeah, so we can take over the show, Nick. Hey, so I'm really interested in why I came in here is talking
you're an old friend.
So YouTube obviously is a different medium as we develop our animated series, and we've got some, the animation companies in London, world class. We've got a writer from BBC Children's. We've got writers from Disney, Nickelodeon. We've put together the right team. Then the key is, how do you get to distribution? And I'm not so sure that, I had the opportunity to talk to a former executive vice president over all of production at Nickelodeon. And her comment was most of the content comes from in-house. Very rarely do these big networks look at anybody outside. It happens, but it's rare. And so what drew me into this particular Blab was these other mechanisms to reach our audience, of which YouTube is one, and being across devices, whether that's a phone, whether that's an iPad, because a lot of kids aren't even watching a TV anymore necessarily. It may be a computer screen.
No, they're not.
And I've read a couple of articles in some cartoon and animation blogs that are talking about how Nick, Cartoon Network, and even Disney are in some ways missing the opportunities that are out there as the demographics are changing how kids are even accessing entertainment, and parents for that matter.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate those comments. Do you want to say something? We got another question, Nick, and I also wanted to check in with you about time because we never talked about how long you're willing to stay and what time you have to go.
How about we'll go until 5:15?
Okay. Yeah, so another 5 minutes.
Just
Did you want to say something about that? And we got a question here about Vimeo and Daily Motion I want to take.
Sure. What you're describing is the phenomenon which has turned production deals backwards. And that is that nobody goes into a pitch meeting now in Hollywood. Nobody goes into a pitch meeting. I'm underlining that without including in their pitch the audience they bring to the network with their property. So it is assumed that your property has a community with it. Otherwise, you're not terribly valuable because they already have audience. If you don't bring fans, if you haven't cultivated the fans, perhaps not exactly as John's described with Amanda Palmer, but in your own way, in terms of people who are following what you're doing, you really don't have very much to offer because, as I say, content we're in a glut situation. There's so much out there from which they can choose that they can wait till it migrates to the top and skim it off the top
and then buy it.
Yeah, right. So they have all these deals of movies that are coming off of successful YouTubers. It's not that the content is in and of itself exceptionally awesome. It's just these people bring an audience of 5 or 10 million people before a frame of the film is shot. And so
isn't that very analogous to the publishing industry that, publisher, if you're looking for a publishing deal, they want to know what's your platform. That aren't you going to be delivering an audience with it? If you don't have a platform, they won't talk to you.
Yeah. I mean, this is the backwards thing. We're now the brands and the content is the expression of the brand of the artist. Not just a thing in and of itself. Yeah. I mean, I'm exaggerating.
And I talk about this, and I'll pimp my own book, in terms of internet marketing, 8 key concepts every business must know, that it's about authenticity and building relationships, long-term sustainable relationships. And the only way to do that is by leading with value. What you have to be putting out value. You have to be doing stuff for free that people appreciate. like really authentically. And then that really provides the seed and the fertilizer and the soil for relationships that can build this kind of audience that ultimately can get you real support.
There's another platform that I would call to your attention, Rush, and that is DeviantArt, if you're not familiar with it. So DeviantArt is...
Can you spell that real quick?
Deviant, Deviant. It's just like I'm saying it.
And it comes right up. Yep.
Yeah. And DeviantArt was, it's comic books and illustration artists, but it's gotten much broader, and they do challenges and they do all sorts of things. And it's a community where you can find collaborators of all sorts in the artistic and content creation world. And it's very different than a lot of these others. It's much less about these mass audience, kinds of things. It's really about compatible creative types. I know a lot of people on that platform. Comic books, very huge in the comic book art world, illustration art, that kind of thing, animation. And part of it is, there's really no platform that you shouldn't be on, but it's part of a strategy of how you're using your engagement opportunities with fans in various platforms to bring them to your central destination, either to support you, to get this thing done, to your whether that's the biggest single problem with Kickstarter, in my opinion, is it concentrates everything into a very compressed period of time. And then if you don't hit your target, all of that work goes off into the ozone.
And that's why I like the Patreon model better. Is it? It's like
it's an
ongoing flow.
So
we got to let you go, but so the last question for Nick, and I'll hang out a little longer if people want. We're actually getting a little more action here. Is
he froze again?
He froze again, so we can take over. Hey, all I was saying, I could never afford the time of...
Well, now I'm not hearing you either, so...
Maybe it's you?
Talking about these...
Blab is really having issues, according to Radio Free Bob. I seem to be the only one I can hear.
John got kicked out of his own Blab. Can you hear me now?
That's
my lower third
humiliating.
is now. You hear me all right?
Yeah,
I froze and disappeared and came back with my lower third. That was really weird. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I can.
Somebody in the chat, can you hear me, or did I look like Blab had a little freeze there? Thank you, Rush. I'm glad you can hear me. You and Nick are both frozen. You can refresh your browser, Nick and Rush.
I don't seem to be frozen.
Say goodbye. But and my lower third is actually happening, weirdly enough. Rush, you're still here, but you look frozen. So I'm going to hit you out and have you come back. How weird. He took himself out. Well, that's an interesting thing to have happen. Okay, here comes Nick back, and here comes Rush back. Was it something I said?
Something you froze. I don't know.
Yeah, that was weird. That was about the most.
Somebody turned.
Yeah, I could hear and see both of you.
Yeah, and we're good now. But that was one of the more serious Blab technical glitches that I've ever seen.
Well, we have a lot of other people saying they can hear. So, okay. Yeah. Well, why don't we hit that last question, whatever it is? I can't find it.
It was about Vimeo and one other platform.
Where's the question?
Daily Motion. It didn't come up as a question. They just put it in the chat without the
what's Vimeo and Daily Motion? What are your thoughts on those networks?
Yeah, and I'll say a couple of other things in the marketing. But Nick, go ahead because you.
Well, Vimeo and Daily Motion are, to a certain degree, have staked out niche portions of the market that YouTube intended to. That it was the YouTube market. So originally, when we never saw video sharing, social video sharing platforms before, YouTube was the first one, and then there used to be MetaCafe and all kinds of others. Vimeo very quickly migrated, in part because of their ownership by IAC, to being a so-called professional or filmmaker platform. They touted their quality differential, which lasted for about a minute and a half before YouTube met it. So, you can never win there if you're competing with Google. But a lot of where they've gone recently has been to become essentially another VOD platform, competing with companies like VHS, and there are others that provide and YouTube itself has this feature as well, where you can have a destination that consumers can go to and either subscribe or pay on a pay-per-view basis. So they're competing with Amazon Instant Video more as a model than a subscription model like Netflix. And it certainly works. I don't know the numbers to know how successful they've been. They've begun to invest in original content, and they've been, they have a content community. But by and large, I think their bread and butter is filmmakers posting private versions and, for sharing of a video feature. And, it certainly works fairly well, but there's a limit on the size of the files you can share and the speed with which it uploads them. I'm advising a company called Rushterra. You can check it out, rushterra.com, which has, it's about 100 times faster than Dropbox, and it's quite a lot faster than Vimeo. And it has it transcodes for any platform and plays without buffering or stuttering. So you can check out Rushterra and get a free account for a month. And that, I think, is a limited business model. So I believe they may be on life support from IAC. Metacafe, I think its strength is because it's a French company. And
what about the question was about Dailymotion?
I'm sorry, it's Dailymotion. What did I say? Metacafe. I meant Dailymotion. Yeah, Dailymotion is a French company, and I deal with them because they speak French in parts of Canada, and I think that they have a more of a. They are trying to. I think I would say somewhere in between the two. So they're trying to create communities and curated content, and they're trying to create a better user experience. I think for all of the money and effort that's been put into YouTube, the user experience is still pretty awful. You've got this thing over here and streams over here.
I got to let you go, but I want to throw in a comment, which is that your comment earlier actually about there's nowhere where you shouldn't be. It's like Wistia, not Wistia because I want to talk about Wistia separately, but Vimeo and Dailymotion are great places to try and get more exposure. But the question is, everybody in general has limited capacity, and how many places do you really want to be? I would upload your videos to Facebook before I would do them to Dailymotion, because I think the built-in sharing and the fact that you're on a website that's searchable with 1 billion plus, what is it, 1.2 billion, 1.3 billion, whatever it is now. That's a much bigger opportunity to get exposure than Dailymotion is. But if you can do all of them, then do all of them. People have to make choices about where they want to go.
It's kind of like what you said earlier, consistency.
That's a big part of it.
And also the fact that if you're a small production company or a solo operator, how practical is it for you to really be able to do all of this stuff on all these different platforms? Yeah. You kind of have to make your choices. And I would agree with you, John, about Facebook. I know people who've built companies based on the virality that Facebook gives to their videos. So I have a friend who left MTV. He started a company it's called We Are the Mighty, and it's aimed at active duty military millennials and their families. It's a very large niche. 103 million active duty and their families, plus, others. And they produce original video every week, and most of it gets posted first on Facebook. And if it takes off, they get, 500,000 or 1 million views on Facebook. Yeah. They don't get that anymore.
And then on the marketing side of things, I like hosting on Wistia. So I'm actually having a conversation with them about maybe doing some marketing communications education. But they enable you to do lead capture, right? It's more direct to consumer marketing or business to business marketing. But there's so many different ways to leverage your video assets. Big part of it is to be consistent. Nick DeMartino, it's 22 after the hour. You said you were going at 15. So I really appreciate your time and great to connect with you and great to talk with you. And thank you for your insights.
Well, thank you, John, and nice to meet you and everybody else on the
thank you, John, for letting me. And Nick, I don't know how I'd have met you or even had access to you other than this. I couldn't afford to probably get access to you, so this was great. I really love Blab because of the opportunity to connect with some really great people like yourself.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much, and you can always subscribe to my newsletter at nickdemartino.net.
nickdemartino.net, and I'm at combridges.com. I'm going to stop the recording, but we're here Fridays at 4 p.m. Pacific, most Fridays on Blab, and follow us all on social media. combridges.com has all my social media stuff, and nickdemartino.net, and thank you for watching.
Good evening.